The day the ships appeared, the skies over Earth turned dark, not from clouds or smoke, but from the massive shadows cast by the Galactic Empire's fleet. Their vessels hung like metal mountains above major cities, silent and threatening. In the underground command center of Earth's United Defense Force, Admiral James Roberts stared at the holographic display with narrowed eyes. Dozens of red dots marked the positions of alien ships. His weathered face showed no fear, only focus. "How many?" he asked simply. 57 major vessels, sir," replied Lieutenant Tom Wilson. "Nothing in our arsenal can match even one of them." Roberts nodded. This wasn't unexpected. Humans had prepared for this possibility since they first looked to the stars. "Alert the Global Council. We need a united response." On the main Imperial ship, Commander Vex looked down at the blue planet with cold eyes. Another primitive world to add to the Empire's collection. The beings here had barely reached their moon. Taking them would be simple. "Prepare the standard message," Vex ordered. "Give them the usual time to accept our terms." His assistant, Officer Dell, bowed slightly. "Yes, Commander. Shall we prepare landing parties as well?" "Of course. They never refuse. It would be suicide." Vex smiled thinly. "The Emperor will be pleased with another quick conquest." The message reached every screen, every phone, every device on Earth at once. The translation was perfect, the meaning clear. "People of Earth, you are now part of the Galactic Empire. Your resources and people belong to us. Resistance means destruction. Accept Imperial rule, and you may live. You have 6 hours to decide." In the Global Council chamber, 24 leaders from Earth's nations gathered in emergency session. Director Anna Miller, elected head of the council, stood before them. "We all received the same message," she said. "We must decide as one planet, not as separate nations." An older man raised his hand. "What chance do we have against such power? Maybe we should accept their terms and find a way to fight later." "No." The voice came from Dr. Ben Harris, head of Earth's Science Division. "Our studies of space signals suggest the Empire controls thousands of worlds. No one who surrenders ever breaks free. It must be now or never." Miller looked at each face in the room. "We vote in 1 hour. Think carefully." On the Imperial ship, Vex was surprised when his communication officer reported unusual activity. "They're not panicking," the officer said. "Their military forces are moving in organized patterns. They're preparing something." Vex frowned. "Impossible. They must see they have no chance." Exactly 5 hours after the Empire's message, Earth responded. On every Imperial ship, screens lit up with the image of Director Miller, standing before the flags of all Earth nations. "To the Galactic Empire," she began, her voice steady. "We have received your demand. We have considered it carefully. Our answer is this: Earth belongs to its people. We reject your claim. We will not surrender. If you want our world, you will have to fight for every inch of it." Commander Vex stared at the screen in disbelief. No one refused the Empire. No one. "They're mad," he whispered. Then louder, "Prepare attack formations. We'll show them the price of defiance." As the Imperial ships began to move, Admiral Roberts watched from his command center. He smiled slightly despite the danger. "And so it begins," he said quietly. "Send word to activate all defense protocols. Tell our people, today we fight not just for our lives, but for our right to remain free." Across Earth, people looked up at the dark shapes in their skies. Fear was there, yes, but something else too. A determination that had carried humans through countless challenges on their home world. Now that same will would face its greatest test among the stars. Intelligence Officer Mark Davis had never slept less in his life. For 3 days straight, he and his team worked in the underground bunker known simply as the Hive, analyzing every piece of Imperial communication they could intercept. "Look at this pattern," Davis said, pointing to scrolling data on his screen. His eyes were red-rimmed but alert. Their messages follow strict protocols. Every command, every response. It's all formatted exactly the same way. Dr. Lisa Park, the team's xenolinguist, nodded. Their language is incredibly structured. No room for creativity or interpretation. It's like they're machines following a program. Or soldiers following orders without question, added Davis. This discovery became their first real advantage. While Imperial forces prepared standard attack formations, Earth's defenders were learning about their enemy. In another section of the hive, a team of engineers worked on something that might change everything. They had captured a small Imperial scout ship during the first wave of attacks. The pilot had self-destructed, but the ship remained mostly intact. Professor Alex Green led the reverse engineering efforts. He ran his hand along the metallic surface of the alien craft. Their technology is advanced, but not magical. It follows the same laws of physics we do. His assistant, Ryan Jones, emerged from the ship's open hatch with a small device. I think I've figured out how their communication system works. It uses quantum entanglement for instant messaging across any distance. Green's eyes widened. If we can replicate this, we could listen to everything they say, Ryan finished. Meanwhile, Admiral Roberts met with Director Miller to discuss strategy. The first Imperial attacks had been pushed back, but barely. Earth's conventional weapons had proven surprisingly effective against the smaller Imperial ships, but the larger vessels remained untouched in orbit. They're arrogant, Roberts explained, looking at holographic images of Imperial ship movements. They follow the same attack patterns every time. No adaptation, no creativity. Miller considered this. So they're predictable. We can use that. Exactly. Their entire empire works on centralized command. Orders come from the top down, with no room for individual thinking. Roberts pointed to a diagram. That's their weakness. They don't know how to fight an enemy that doesn't play by their rules. So we changed the rules, Miller said. The next day, Davis made another breakthrough. His team had managed to access the Imperial database. What they found was both terrifying and encouraging. The Empire controls over 8,000 worlds, he reported to the Emergency Council. But most were primitive when conquered, nothing like Earth. We're the first planet at our technology level to resist. Do they have weaknesses? Asked a council member. Davis displayed a complex map of Imperial territory. Their supply lines are stretched thin. Their conquered worlds are restless. And most importantly, he zoomed in on a section of the map. There are other species fighting back in distant sectors. We're not alone. As the council discussed this new information, Professor Green's team made their own discovery. They had successfully powered up the captured Imperial ship's main computer. Their AI systems are powerful but inflexible, Green reported. They can't handle unexpected inputs or situations outside their programming. Miller saw the opportunity immediately. Can we use this to disrupt their systems? Green smiled for the first time in days. We already have a team writing the most creative, illogical code humanity has ever produced. The kind of thinking only humans can do. Across Earth, preparations accelerated, while the Imperial forces remained in standard formation, waiting for orders from their command chain. Humanity organized in a way the Empire had never seen. There were no central targets to hit, no clear chain of command to disrupt. Earth's forces operated in small, independent units, each with authority to make decisions. Civilian engineers worked alongside military personnel. Former enemies became allies. Director Miller addressed the people of Earth one evening as Imperial ships loomed overhead. They expect us to fight like them, she said. We won't. They expect us to surrender. We won't. They don't understand what they've awakened. Earth has always been divided, but in this threat, we have found unity. And united, we will show the Empire something they've never seen before, a world that refuses to be conquered. Dawn broke over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It would have been beautiful if not for the massive Imperial warships hovering above the clouds. The invasion of Earth had begun. Commander Vex studied the tactical display with confidence. The Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds using the same approach. First, destroy military bases and government centers, then land troops to secure major cities. Resistance typically collapsed within hours. Begin standard conquest procedure, Vex ordered. Target their largest military installations first. Officer Dell nodded. Yes, Commander. Targeting systems locked on Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and 12 other primary targets. The massive ships moved into position, their weapons charging with a glow visible even from the ground. What the Empire didn't know was that Earth had been waiting for exactly this move. Admiral Roberts watched from a mobile command center hidden in the Rocky Mountains. They're following the playbook, he said to his officers. Activate Operation Ghost. Across the planet, Earth's forces implemented their plan. As Imperial ships positioned themselves over obvious targets, they found empty buildings and abandoned bases. The real command centers had been moved underground or to unexpected locations weeks ago. When the Empire fired its first devastating blast at the Pentagon, they hit nothing but an empty shell. On his flagship, Vex frowned at the reports. No casualties. Impossible. Sir, Dell said, confusion evident in his voice, we're detecting unusual electronic activity in our systems. At that moment, thousands of small, unmanned Earth drones launched from hidden locations. They weren't targeting the Imperial ships directly. They were too small to cause damage. Instead, they attached themselves to the hulls and began broadcasting signal jamming frequencies designed by Davis's team. Inside the Imperial ships, chaos erupted as communications failed and targeting systems went offline. What is happening? Vex demanded as his screens flickered. In the confusion, Earth launched its real attack. Fighter jets, modified with technology reverse-engineered from the captured scout ship, streaked into the sky. They were still technologically inferior, but they had one crucial advantage: unpredictability. The Earth pilots flew in patterns no Imperial computer could anticipate, executing maneuvers that seemed suicidal but were carefully calculated to exploit gaps in the Empire's defenses. Captain Frank Walker led the first squadron. Remember the plan, he told his pilots. We can't win by matching their firepower. Hit and run. Target their sensor arrays, then disappear. The Imperial ships, designed to fight conventional space battles against other advanced civilizations, struggled to track the smaller, more agile Earth aircraft that flew too close to their hulls for main weapons to target effectively. Meanwhile, on the ground, Imperial landing forces found themselves walking into ambushes. Earth soldiers used guerrilla tactics, striking from hidden positions before melting away into tunnel systems or dense urban environments. In his command center, Admiral Roberts received reports from around the world. We've captured 3 of their landing craft intact, reported General Taylor from Australia. And their ground troops seem completely lost without direct orders from above. Roberts nodded. Their strength is their technology. Their weakness is their thinking. On the Imperial flagship, Commander Vex was facing something he'd never experienced: failure. Half his landing forces had been captured or destroyed. 3 smaller vessels had been so badly damaged they had to retreat to orbit. And most troubling, Earth's primitive technology was somehow interfering with Imperial systems. This is unacceptable, he said coldly. Prepare a full orbital bombardment. We'll destroy their civilization and start over. Officer Dell hesitated. Sir, that would violate Imperial protocol for resource-rich worlds. The Emperor wants this planet intact. Vex slammed his fist down. Then find those responsible for this resistance and eliminate them. As night fell over Earth, the battle paused briefly. Imperial forces regrouped, trying to adapt their strategies. But Earth had won the first round, and more importantly, had captured vital Imperial technology in the process. In the hive, Davis examined a captured Imperial soldier's equipment. Their personal shields, their weapons. We can replicate some of this now. Director Miller looked at the tactical display, showing Imperial ships withdrawing to higher orbits. We've surprised them, but they'll be back with a new approach. Admiral Roberts nodded grimly. And when they do, we'll be ready with a few more surprises of our own. The Imperial Palace on Nexus Prime glowed with an eerie light as Grand Admiral Thorne stood before the Emperor's holographic image. Thorne was tall and imposing, with a face marked by scars from 100 conquests. This backwater planet resists. The Emperor's voice was soft, yet filled with menace. Vex has failed me. He underestimated them. Emperor, Thorne replied. I will not make the same mistake. See that you don't. Take whatever forces you need. Earth must be made an example of. Thorne bowed. It will be done. 3 days later, Earth's orbital sensors detected a massive energy signature at the edge of the solar system. What emerged from hyperspace was not just a fleet but an armada, hundreds of warships led by Thorne's flagship, the Inevitable. In the hive, Davis watched the incoming fleet with growing dread. This is different, he said to Director Miller. The commander of that lead ship is known across the galaxy. They call him the Planet Breaker. Miller's face remained composed despite the news. Then we need to break him instead. Thorne's strategy was immediately apparent. Rather than attacking directly, his ships formed a blockade around Earth, positioning themselves to intercept anything trying to leave or enter the atmosphere. A siege, Admiral Roberts observed. They're going to try to starve us into submission. Earth had prepared for many scenarios, but a long-term blockade threatened their limited resources. The Global Council gathered to discuss options. We have food and supplies for months, said one representative, but not years. Then we don't wait years, Miller replied. We need to take the fight to them. Professor Green stepped forward. We've completed work on the stealth ships. All eyes turned to him. Using the Imperial technology we captured, we've modified 10 spacecraft with cloaking abilities. They can't carry weapons because of power constraints, but they can slip past the blockade undetected. Roberts nodded slowly. Not to attack, but to gather intelligence and make contact. Contact with whom? Asked a council member. Davis displayed a galactic map. During our analysis of Imperial communications, we identified several sectors where resistance movements are fighting the Empire. If we can reach them, we could form an alliance, Miller finished. The plan was set in motion. Earth's stealth ships, small enough to be crewed by just 3 people each, launched under cover of darkness. They slipped past the Imperial blockade like ghosts, their signatures masked by technology the Empire never expected humans to possess. Captain Laura Reed commanded the lead ship Pathfinder. We're clear of the blockade, she reported back to Earth, setting course for the coordinates of the nearest resistance sector. Meanwhile, Earth continued to frustrate Thorne's forces. When Imperial scouts penetrated the atmosphere, they were quickly ambushed. When the Empire attempted to hack Earth's communication systems, they found themselves countered by constantly evolving defense algorithms. Thorne paced the bridge of his flagship, his patience wearing thin. They're more resourceful than expected. His second-in-command, Major Grimm, approached cautiously. Sir, we've detected unusual activity in Sectors 7 and 9 of the blockade. Small anomalies in our sensor net. Thorne's eyes narrowed. They're testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. He turned to his tactical officer. Tighten the blockade. Nothing gets through. But something already had. 2 weeks into their journey, Captain Reed's Pathfinder reached its destination, a remote outpost on an asteroid at the edge of the Cirrus cluster. Here, they made first contact with the Resistance, a loose alliance of species from conquered worlds. The alien leader, known only as Blue, was skeptical at first. Your world stands against the Empire. Impossible. None survive. Reed showed him recorded images of Earth's successful defense. We not only survived, we captured their technology. And we're willing to share what we've learned. Blue's compound eyes widened. Perhaps there is hope after all. Back on Earth, Davis's team intercepted and decoded an Imperial transmission that changed everything. The message contained deployment orders for all Imperial forces. With this information, Earth could predict the Empire's movements. "This is it," Davis told Miller, his eyes bright with excitement. "With this code, we can listen to everything they say, everywhere in the galaxy." Miller looked at the decoded transmission, a thin smile forming on her lips. "Tell Admiral Roberts to prepare a special team. It's time we brought the fight to Grand Admiral Thorne himself." As Earth's defenders prepared their boldest move yet, the stealth ships continued their secret mission, building connections with resistance forces across the stars. The Empire's grip was vast, but for the first time, it was beginning to loosen. Captain Reed stood in the center of a dimly lit chamber carved from an asteroid. Around her, representatives from 7 different species sat in a rough circle. Some looked almost human, others were utterly alien, but all shared the same determined expression. "Earth offers not just resistance," Reed explained, displaying holographic images of captured Imperial technology, "but a new way to fight. The Empire expects obedience and fear. We offer partnership and hope." A tall, 4-armed being named Kral leaned forward. "Pretty words, but the Empire has ruled for 1,000 years. What makes Earth different from the hundreds of worlds that tried and failed before?" Reed activated another hologram, this one showing Imperial ships retreating from Earth's atmosphere, damaged and in disarray. "Because we've already done what you're still trying to do," she said simply. "And we're willing to share how." The mood in the chamber shifted. Even the most skeptical representatives now looked interested. Blue, the resistance leader who had first welcomed Reed, spoke up. "The Empire's strength has always been its unity. Its weakness might be the same. If we coordinate our attacks, we can divide their forces," finished Reed. "Make them fight on multiple fronts for the first time." Meanwhile, on the edge of Earth's solar system, a critical mission was underway. Using intelligence gathered by Davis's team, Admiral Roberts had authorized a daring plan, the infiltration of Thorne's command ship. The small infiltration vessel, disguised with Imperial identification codes stolen from earlier battles, approached the outer security perimeter. Inside, Lieutenant John Black and his team of 4 operatives checked their equipment one last time. "Remember," Black said quietly, "our goal is the command ship's central communication hub. Get in, plant the device. Get out. No heroics." Their ship transmitted the stolen codes as it approached a massive Imperial supply vessel. The codes worked. They were granted permission to dock. Once aboard, the team moved swiftly through the ship's corridors, their stolen Imperial uniforms providing perfect cover. Back on Earth, Davis monitored their progress from the hive. "They're aboard the supply ship," he reported to Miller. "Now they just need to transfer to Thorne's command vessel when it receives its scheduled resupply." Miller nodded, her face tense. "And if they succeed, then we'll have eyes and ears in the heart of the Empire's command structure." The plan nearly fell apart when an Imperial officer questioned Black's transfer orders. For a tense moment, discovery seemed certain. Then an alarm sounded elsewhere in the ship, a diversion set by another team member. And in the confusion, Black's team slipped aboard the small shuttle heading for Thorne's flagship. Hours later, they reached their target, the communication hub that connected Thorne to the entire Imperial fleet. Working quickly, they installed a tiny device, no larger than a coin, into the main computer array. Its purpose was not to damage but to listen, and when necessary, to subtly alter messages. Device placed, Black whispered into his communicator, beginning extraction. On the bridge of his flagship, Grand Admiral Thorne reviewed the latest reports from the blockade. Earth continued to resist, but resources would eventually run out. It was only a matter of time. His tactical officer approached. "Sir, we've received intelligence about resistance activity in the Cygnus sector. They appear to be mounting some kind of offensive." Thorne frowned. The resistance had never coordinated attacks before. Send 2 destroyer groups to investigate. Unknown to Thorne, similar reports were coming in from 3 other sectors. Each time, he dispatched ships from the Earth blockade, gradually weakening his position. In the asteroid base, now dubbed Alliance Point, representatives from various resistance movements formalized their cooperation. Reed watched as centuries-old enemies set aside their differences to face a common threat. "This is unprecedented," Blue told her. "Some of these species have hated each other longer than humans have had civilization." Reed smiled. "Nothing unites like a common enemy." The newly formed alliance had its first test when Imperial forces arrived in the Cygnus sector, expecting to find a small resistance cell. Instead, they encountered a coordinated fleet of ships from 3 different systems, using Earth-inspired tactics that confused and ultimately defeated the Imperial attackers. As news of the victory spread through the Alliance network, hope grew. Earth had not just survived. It had changed the rules of a game the Empire had dominated for centuries. On Earth, Miller received the report of the Alliance's first victory with cautious optimism. "It's a start," she said, "but Thorne won't be fooled for long." Roberts nodded grimly. "No, soon he'll realize what's happening and strike with everything he has." "Then we better be ready," Miller replied, "because the real fight is just beginning." Grand Admiral Thorne stood motionless as he watched the holographic display. Red lights blinked across the galaxy map, each one representing an Imperial defeat. His eyes, cold and calculating, narrowed to slits. "Enough," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Yet everyone on the bridge froze at the sound. "This ends now." Major Grimm approached cautiously. "Sir, our forces are spread thin. The resistance is attacking in multiple sectors simultaneously." Thorne's fist crashed down on the console. "It's all connected. These primitives from Earth have somehow united our enemies." He turned to his command staff. "Recall all ships, every available vessel. We will crush Earth so completely that no one will dare resist again." In the hive, Davis's monitoring systems suddenly lit up with alerts. "They're moving," he said, his voice tense. "All Imperial ships are being recalled to Earth." Admiral Roberts studied the tactical display. "How many?" "Over 300 major warships," Davis replied. "More than we've ever faced." Roberts nodded grimly. "Thorne has figured out our strategy. He's decided to end this with one massive strike." He activated the global communication system. "All defense units, this is Admiral Roberts. Prepare for full-scale invasion. This is not a drill." Across Earth, military and civilian defense teams moved into position. The planet had been preparing for this moment, but the sheer scale of the approaching force was daunting. Director Miller addressed an emergency session of the Global Council. "We always knew this day would come. The Empire is committing everything to this attack." "Can we survive it?" asked one council member. Miller looked at each face around the table. "We must. Not just for Earth, but for every world fighting for freedom." In orbit, Earth's newly constructed defense platforms activated. Based on captured Imperial technology, but modified with human ingenuity, these platforms were Earth's first line of defense. They were fewer in number than the approaching Imperial fleet, but they held one crucial advantage: unpredictability. The Imperial Armada emerged from hyperspace like a metal storm, hundreds of warships filling Earth's skies. At their center was Thorne's flagship, the Inevitable, twice the size of any other vessel. "Begin the attack," Thorne ordered. "No mercy." The first wave of Imperial ships surged forward, weapons charged. They expected Earth's defenses to crumble quickly under their overwhelming firepower. Instead, they found themselves caught in a web of countermeasures. Earth's defense platforms didn't just fire back. They adapted. Each platform's artificial intelligence, designed by Professor Green's team, learned from every exchange. When Imperial ships adjusted their attack pattern, the platforms adjusted faster. On the ground, Imperial landing forces faced an even greater challenge. Earth's defenders had transformed cities and landscapes into intricate traps. Every street, every building could hide a surprise. Traditional military bases had been abandoned in favor of mobile command centers that constantly changed location. Lieutenant Black, now field commander for the North American Defense Zone, watched from a hidden bunker as Imperial troops moved through the ruins of what had once been a major city. "Wait until they reach the central square," he told his officers. "Then spring the trap." When the Imperial forces reached the designated point, Black gave the signal. Hidden emitters activated, broadcasting the same disruptive frequencies that had proved effective in earlier battles. Imperial communication systems failed instantly. At the same time, the buildings around the square opened to reveal concealed weapons platforms. Caught in the crossfire with no way to coordinate, the Imperial ground forces suffered heavy losses. Similar scenes played out across the planet. The Empire had numbers and technology, but Earth had preparation and determination. In orbit, the battle took a darker turn. Despite Earth's innovative defenses, the sheer number of Imperial ships began to tell. Defense platforms were destroyed one by one. Imperial vessels pushed closer to the atmosphere. Aboard the Inevitable, Thorn allowed himself a cold smile. They fight well for primitives. But the outcome was never in doubt. Major Grimm nodded in agreement. Their main defense grid is down to 30% capacity. Shall we begin bombardment of their population centers? Yes, Thorn replied. Target their Global Council headquarters first. Cut off the head, and the body dies. As Imperial ships positioned themselves for the killing blow, Director Miller and her staff worked frantically in their underground command center. Reports of defeats came in from around the world. Their situation seemed hopeless. Then Miller received an unexpected message from Davis. "VIRUS ready. Authorization required." Her eyes widened as she remembered the Infiltration team's mission. The device they had planted on Thorn's ship was not just for surveillance. It was a delivery system for an Earth-designed computer virus that could potentially cripple the entire Imperial command network. Miller hesitated only briefly before typing her response. Authorization granted. EXEQT. High above Earth, as Thorn prepared to deliver the final blow, his ship's systems suddenly went dark. Darkness enveloped the bridge of the Inevitable. For 3 long seconds, every system on Grand Admiral Thorn's flagship failed completely. When emergency power flickered back on, nothing worked properly. Weapons systems targeted phantom objects. Navigation showed impossible coordinates. Communication broadcasts nonsense. "What is happening?" Thorn demanded, his legendary calm finally breaking. Major Grimm frantically worked at his console. "Unknown, sir. The virus is spreading to all connected systems." The virus, created by Davis and his team, was unlike anything the Empire had encountered. It didn't simply corrupt data. It rewrote Imperial programming with chaotic human creativity. The rigid, logical Imperial systems had no defense against it. As the virus spread from ship to ship through the Imperial network, confusion turned to chaos. Some vessels fired on their allies. Others went into emergency shutdown. The carefully coordinated attack collapsed into disorder. From the hive, Davis watched his creation work. "The virus is spreading faster than expected," he reported. "Their entire command structure is compromised." Admiral Roberts saw the opportunity immediately, launched the counterattack. "All units, all allies, now." Across Earth, defense forces that had been in retreat suddenly pushed forward. The remaining defense platforms intensified their fire, targeting the now vulnerable Imperial ships. But the most surprising attack came from beyond the solar system. Emerging from hyperspace behind the Imperial fleet came dozens of ships bearing the markings of the newly formed alliance. Captain Reed had succeeded beyond all hopes. She had returned with a coalition force drawn from resistance movements across the galaxy. "Earth stood for us," said Blue's voice over the common frequency. "Now we stand for Earth." Caught between Earth's defenders and the Alliance fleet, the Imperial Armada began to break apart. Individual ship commanders, cut off from central command by the virus, made different choices. Some continued to fight. Others retreated. A few even surrendered. Admiral Roberts directed Earth's ships toward one specific target, the inevitable. Thorn is the key, he told his commanders. Capture him. And this ends today. Roberts himself led the assault team that boarded the partially disabled flagship. Fighting through confused Imperial troops, they fought their way to the bridge. When the doors slid open, Roberts found Grand Admiral Thorn standing calmly in the center of the chaos, as if waiting for them. "You fought well," Thorn acknowledged, his hand resting on his weapon. "Better than any world the Empire has ever faced." "This isn't just about fighting well," Roberts replied. "It's about fighting for the right to determine our own future." Their eyes locked in silent understanding before Thorn slowly removed his hand from his weapon. "The day is yours, Admiral. What happens now?" While the battle concluded in space, Director Miller prepared for the most important broadcast in human history. From a secret location, she would address not just Earth but the entire galaxy. As technicians made final adjustments, Miller reviewed her notes one last time. The words had to be perfect. They would either secure Earth's freedom or mark it for destruction by whatever Imperial forces remained. "We're ready, Director," said the chief technician. "The captured Imperial communication network will carry your message to every world in the Empire." Miller nodded and stepped before the camera. The red light blinked on. "People of Earth and all free worlds across the galaxy," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Today marks a turning point in our shared history. For too long, the Galactic Empire has ruled through fear and force. Today, we declare that era over." The camera switched to show Grand Admiral Thorn, now in custody, standing beside Admiral Roberts. "Even the Empire's greatest military leader now acknowledges what we have proven. No power has the right to claim dominion over those who wish to be free. Earth does not stand alone in this belief. We are joined by an alliance of worlds who share our vision of a galaxy where each planet determines its own path." The broadcast displayed images of the Allied fleet in orbit around Earth. "To the Emperor and what remains of Imperial authority, our message is simple. Earth is not yours to take. Neither are the worlds of our alliance. From this day forward, any Imperial vessel entering our territories will be considered an act of war." Miller's expression softened slightly. "But we also extend an open hand. Former Imperial worlds seeking independence will find friends here. Those who wish to trade and share knowledge peacefully are welcome. A new age begins today." She paused, then delivered the final words with quiet determination. "Earth declares, no entry for Galactic Empire. Our freedom is non-negotiable." As the broadcast ended, silence fell in command centers across Earth. Then, gradually, cheers erupted. On the streets, people emerged from shelters to look up at skies, now filled with the retreating shapes of Imperial ships. In the hive, Davis received messages from resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Many Imperial-controlled worlds, seeing Earth's success, had begun their own uprisings. Admiral Roberts looked out from the captured Imperial flagship at the blue planet below. "What do you think happens now?" he asked the captive Thorn. The Grand Admiral's expression remained unreadable. "The Empire has never known defeat. It will not accept this easily." "Then they'll learn another lesson from Earth," Roberts replied. "We're very good at standing our ground." As dawn broke over a free Earth, new ships arrived daily, refugees, allies, and even Imperial defectors. Earth had become more than a planet. It had become a symbol, a sanctuary, and the birthplace of a new galactic order built on a simple, powerful idea. Every world has the right to chart its own destiny.